I want to do a workshop on looking at beliefs, like what are our beliefs around health and healing and disease and all that. And I'll share one of my favorite images. I find myself continually coming back to this image because I find it super useful. This is from Dave Gray. And Dave Gray is also he is the founder, if you can say that. I'm not sure if that's the right context, the creator of the empathy map, which many of you know from other contexts, maybe other places and degrees of work. If you've never heard of an empathy map, don't worry about it. But just FYI, same dude. Many of you have heard me talk about the term or mention the term liminal thinking. And so this comes from Dave's book called Liminal Thinking. Liminal thinking literally means beyond the threshold. That's the meaning of liminal, is it's beyond the threshold of the conditioned mind, beyond the door, beyond the gateway. So the conditioned mind, I mean, the yogis would use different terms for that in terms of means I am, kara is factor. So with this image, the part of you that has had experiences, that's what you have individually experienced. That's the ahamkara. So you could draw, like, for those of you who are into like Sanskrit terminology or whatever, you could say kara and point an arrow to the box that says experience, because that's the experience that you have had as an individual. Now there's experiences that we've also had that are of the universal, like universal energy experiences or unity consciousness experiences that are also part of your experience box, but might not seem like they're individual to you, like to your like aham or I amness. But they kind of are too, because your universal and individual experiences are wrapped up in that experience box. Okay, I babbled away. I think we're here now. 21 body thrivers in the house. So again, this is Dave's cool little diagram here. So you'll notice that your experience rests upon a much greater reality, and that the nature of that much greater reality is that it's unknowable. Like, you cannot know all of reality. On some level, you cannot know all the things. So I'm traveling with my daughter. We've been doing some longer hikes, and you know, when like 4-year-olds ask, but why? Well, she's 14 and she's not saying why, but she's like, she keeps asking me questions that are so beyond my experience of like what I know, that it just keeps reminding me how much there is in reality. There's a lot to know. So what does this have to do with our beliefs and what our beliefs are around health, and what our beliefs are around healing, and what our beliefs are around our goals and our thrive? And that's really what I wanted to have us do a bit of a exploration on today. So what we'll do is I'll explain a little bit more about this map, and then I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want, when I ask you these questions, notice what's coming up in the questions, like what pops into your mind, because some of what might pop in as we go into this might be contradictory thoughts. Some of it might come in as just, you know, stream of consciousness. Some of it, what might come up is like really strong beliefs or convictions. And we're just going to allow for all of it. And then at the end, we'll talk a bit about what our beliefs are around health and disease and medicine and doctors and healers and all the things. Okay. Are you guys game? Game for the experiment? Okay, cool. So if you're driving or running or working out or whatnot, like you might do this later, and I'll just cut and paste the questions I'm asking into the text part of this lesson. So you could just go back and kind of journal it out later on. And that's totally cool. No harm, no foul there. All right. So what I just love about Dave Gray is his sense of humor. Like, if you look at the top line, right? And you start to put this together. So the top line is what is obvious to you. And it might be obvious to you, and it might be obvious to you and the people around you, but it's all resting on just a little teeny tiny chunk of experience of reality and the greater reality that's unknowable. And that's, to me, what's so amusing about this is like, we have these really strong theories and judgments and beliefs and things that we think are super obvious, but it's really just resting on a small chunk of possible experience. And what brings us beyond the threshold, beyond our conditioned thinking into liminal thinking, is actually in part when we question our beliefs. And one of the ways that we can question our beliefs or sort of open that door, and it's when you're beyond the threshold, think of the threshold of a door. It's actually a technical term, and a door is the threshold, right? When you're stepping through the door, you're crossing that, you're crossing that threshold. So you're crossing into different ways of thinking. You're crossing into perhaps different experiences just through investigating your own beliefs. And that's really what we're aiming for here. Okay, any questions or comments so far? You will need a pen and paper for this activity, or the digital equivalent of what used to be pens and papers. All right, good. So I think it's helpful for me to keep this image up while I read the questions. Do you guys think so? I think it's more interesting than, yeah, okay. So I'm just going to keep this up in the background, and I'm just going to ask you some questions about your beliefs, about what is obvious to you, right? Because your beliefs are what is obvious to you. So what are your beliefs? We'll start with your body. What are your beliefs about your body? Again, I'm looking for a stream of consciousness. You're looking for whatever pops in, or whatever you do have strong convictions about. What are your beliefs about your body? And I'm somewhat curious too, some of these beliefs you may have been raised with, and some beliefs may be actually counter culture to your family's beliefs about your body. So that's also worth noting as well. I'm curious which of your beliefs, as you're writing them down, just to note for yourself, like which of your beliefs are actually hard won based on certain life experiences. So certain experiences you've had in your body have changed your beliefs over time. And for some of you, that's been absolutely pivotal about how certain experiences that you've had have changed your beliefs. In some ways may even be opposite of the way that you were raised. If you can notice any theories that have emanated from your experiences, note those down. Sometimes those are more elusive. So if like nothing's coming in when I say that, like I honestly don't worry about it too much. But if you're like, no, I definitely have some theories. Then I'm also curious, like, what do you not know in terms of body? So if we go to that very bottom line of like reality is ultimately, the whole of reality is unknowable. What are some of your bigger questions or bigger, like, I don't really know what to believe about this part? And my next question then, we'll go through a bunch of these at highest level of belief. So we'll set body aside for now. And it's going to ask the same question about mind. What are your beliefs about the mind, the nature of the mind, the human mind, the human being's mind? What are some of your beliefs? If anyone has trouble like filtering, like trying to get this right, there's no right. There's just no right and wrong in here. It's just, again, a way of accessing liminal thinking. Is very experiential. So you don't need to filter yourself at all. It's actually often helpful to really not filter yourself and just simply notice what comes up. And like I mentioned before, there might be contradictory beliefs that you have, and it's okay to allow for contradictions. And as you investigate your beliefs about mind, again, return to what experiences have led you to those beliefs. If there's been any pivotal life experiences in particular. And notice as well, like how your experiences have pointed your attention. So how have you pointed your attention with your mind in your life? I know these questions are huge and broad and deep in context. All right, and what are your beliefs about healing? What are your experiences of healing? What are your theories about healing? What is obvious to you about healing? Part of what's helpful in this is to let yourself really experience the experience in your body. So to answer these questions, not just from the mind, but also from within yourself. And you can ask the body and the mind about healing. You can ask your body what it knows about healing. You can ask your mind what it knows about healing. Or you can ask the body mind what it knows about healing, if that's a better word for you. All right, and then what is the nature of disease? What is your experience of disease? For some people, this word is a lot more accessible when you just simply hyphenate it. And to me, this is really important, with etymology in general is words can make more sense when you see them written differently, or when you get into the etymology of a word. That can be insightful to accessing your own experience and accessing your own beliefs and your own judgments. So whether you write it DIS-ease or whether you write it as one word, the question is, what are your beliefs about disease? And you can ask yourself as well, like, what are your beliefs about disease in your body? What are your beliefs about disease in your mind? What are your beliefs about disease in your body or mind and healing? What are your beliefs about healing disease? What is so obvious to you about disease? I mean, it's fun to just bring it into the hyperbole of the obvious. What is obvious to you? It doesn't have to be obvious to anyone but you, because you're just relying on your experience of what's obvious. Your experience. What's obvious to you. How does disease originate or start for you? How can you draw on your own experience to create a theory or a judgment or a belief about disease? Oh yeah, and anyone who's joining late, we're using Dave Gray's liminal thinking, and I'm just getting into our beliefs of what's obvious to us, in part to open the door. I think this is super helpful. Like, a lot of how deep wisdom was with codified, if you will, was through inquiry practice. And so that's what we're doing, is just a very ancient practice called inquiry practice. We know the ancient Greeks did it, the Vedics did it. Like, this is what humans have always done. It's just asked, stopped, paused, and asked the questions of like, what do we know to be true? What is obvious to us? But how is what's obvious to us actually limited? Just a sliver of experience. And where is our experience? And what we'll do in a few minutes is like, we'll compare notes. And we'll see if we compare all of our experiences, if we can find some interesting common ground, and if we can also find some contradictory ground, because truth is found in all of it. And don't worry if you missed anything, just pick up right where we are and relax and enjoy the process, and don't worry about it. You can go back later and I'll list all the other questions. Okay, so right now we're working on disease or dis-ease, and what is obvious to us? What is obvious to you about disease? What's obvious to your mind about disease? What's obvious to your body about disease? Aging. What are your beliefs about aging? What are your experiences with aging? What is obvious to you about aging? What's the connection between healing and aging from your experience? What are your beliefs about disease and aging? Notice as well, like when I mentioned earlier about being aware of the visceral experience, like if there's strong feelings that come up with any of the words, just notice what those feelings are. And if you can, color those in or write those down. If there's an emotion related to a word, allow that to be part of the experience that you're that you have with that word or that concept. The word is a representation of an experience or a concept. Dying. What are your beliefs about death and dying? You can ask yourself the relationship between healing and aging and dying. What are your theories about dying? And again, if you have any contradictory beliefs, just notice and note some of the contradictions in your own experiences and in your own beliefs. That's just all fodder, grist for the mill. All right, what are your beliefs about healers? And when you hit a core belief or a core theory, note that. Like when you hit something that you're like, oh, that's a core theory for me. Just note that. You might highlight it, underline it. You're respecting the truth of your own experience in this process, and that I think that is important. That's one of my beliefs. Healer is the word. So yeah, Charu, it's with these, it's like we could get into differentiations and we're not. We're staying very broad. And you might include all the things that broad term brings up for you from your experiences. Good question. Do you have judgments about healers? Theories about healers? Experiences that are creating those judgments and group beliefs? Experiences can come in so many ways, right? We can read a book, we can hear someone else's talk about their experience, and part of that becomes our experience. We can have direct perception experiences. We can have experiences in different states of consciousness that might not be a waking state of consciousness. What are our experiences about healers and dying? What's the relationship in your experience? What's your theory? Doctors. What are your beliefs about doctors? You're pulling from your experience. What's obvious to you? Noting your own contradictions or paradoxes is another way of saying that. That's maybe a better word. Again, notice your emotional resonance with certain words, how different words, and you can go back in your notes and be like, what is the emotional resonance I have with this word over that word? You're just allowing the visceral experience to be part of your experience. So it's not just cognitive that you're drawing from. What are your theories about doctors and aging? All right, two more. What are your beliefs about setting goals? What are your judgments from your own experiences in setting goals for yourself? What's obvious to you about setting goals based on your experience? And when you hit upon something, you're like, oh, that's a theory. Highlight your theory based on your experience. And what is your belief about achieving goals? So the last one was setting goals. Now we're on to achieving goals. And now that we're in this stream of consciousness writing space, I'm going to ask you these questions from Peter Block and community that he found really helpful. And this question is, what is the opportunity at the crossroads of your life right now? So what's the opportunity right now? What's the crossroads right now? And again, don't aim for right, just notice what emerges. What's interesting about a crossroads is like you're going down one road, and at a crossroads, it's not a fork in the road, right? There's actually like 3 opportunities present at a crossroads. So there's a level of complexity in crossroads. You might see it more as a fork, and it could be a fork. It could be an either or, but it could also be like multiple choice. You could go back the way you came. You could keep going forward. You could go left. You could go right. There's a lot going on at a crossroads. India and I have been driving around northern Portugal and hiking around northern Portugal, and like we keep, like needing to like turn around and double back when we go the wrong way. So that also happens at a crossroads where you realize you got to go back the way you came for a little bit. All right. Peace out.